When Western media reports on China, the story often sounds familiar. If China is growing, it is a threat. If China is slowing down, it is collapsing. If Chinese companies succeed, they must be subsidized. If Chinese people support their economy, they must be brainwashed. If China builds infrastructure, it is expanding influence. If the West builds infrastructure, it is investing in the future. And this is where the real problem begins. Because this is not simply about whether Western media criticizes China. Every country should be criticized, China included. The problem is something deeper. It is about the framework. It is about the language. It is about the double standards used to explain the same type of behavior when it comes from China versus when it comes from the West. Today, I want to talk about the double standards behind Western media coverage of China. Not because China is perfect, not because Western media is always wrong, but because if we want to understand the 21st century clearly, we need to understand not only what is happening in China, but also how China is being framed. Because the way a story is told can shape the way hundreds of millions of people see the world. And when the subject is China, the gap between reality and the narrative is often much wider than most people realize. Let's start with one of the clearest examples: industrial policy. When the United States supports this semiconductor industry, it is called national security. When Europe supports clean technology, it is called green transition. When Japan, South Korea, or Germany coordinate with industry, it is called strategic competitiveness. But when China supports electric vehicles, batteries, solar panels, high-speed rail, or advanced manufacturing, the language changes. Suddenly, it becomes unfair competition. It becomes state distortion. It becomes overcapacity. It becomes a threat to the global market. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Every major industrial power has used the state to shape this economy. The United States did it with defense technology, aerospace, semiconductors, the internet, pharmaceuticals, and clean energy. Europe did it with aviation, agricultural, energy, rail, and strategic industries. Japan and South Korea did it during their own industrial rise. Even Silicon Valley, often described as the purest symbol of free market innovation, was deeply shaped by government research, military contracts, university funding, and public procurement. So the question is not whether governments support industries. They all do. The real question is, why is Western industrial policy framed as responsible strategy, while Chinese industrial policy is framed as cheating? That is the double standard. When Western governments intervene, they are protecting jobs. When China intervenes, it is distorting the market. When Western countries build supply chain resilience, they are being prudent. When China builds supply chain resilience, it is pursuing dominance. Same behavior, different label, and the labels matter, because labels decide whether a country is seen as modernizing or threatening. Now look at how companies are described. When Apple succeeds, people talk about design, branding, innovation, and ecosystem. When Tesla succeeds, people talk about vision, engineering, risk-taking, and disruption. When NVIDIA succeeds, people talk about technological leadership. But when Chinese companies succeed, many Western reports begin to suspicion. How much state support did they receive? Are they connected to the government? Are they a national security risk? Are they benefiting from unfair subsidies? Whether we are talking about BYD, Huawei, TikTok, DJI, CATL, or Chinese solo companies, the pattern is similar. Chinese success is rarely allowed to be just success. It must be explained as something suspicious. Now, of course, Chinese companies do operate in a political and economic system where the state plays a major role. That is true, but Western companies also operate inside systems that protect, finance, regulate, and support them. American tech companies benefit from deep capital markets, government research, defense spending, tax structures, legal protections, and global financial power. European companies benefit from public-private coordination, trade protection, regulatory influence, and industrial policy. The difference is that Western support is nominalized. Chinese support is problematic. If a Western company works with the government, it is partnership. If a Chinese company works with the government, it is control. If a Western company becomes global dominant, it is a champagne. If a Chinese company becomes global dominant, it is a threat. This creates a very simple narrative. Western success comes from creativity. Chinese success comes from the state. But that is not analysis. That is ideology. Another double standard appears in the language of security. In recent years, Western countries have become much more aggressive in restricting Chinese technology, Chinese investment, Chinese apps, Chinese telecom equipment, Chinese ships, Chinese EVs, and Chinese access to advanced tools. The explanation is usually national security, supply chain security, data security, strategic autonomy, resilience, de-risking. But when China restricts foreign platforms, regulates data, controls sensitive infrastructure, or promotes domestic technology, the language becomes very different. Then it is described as authoritarian control, market closure, paranoia, economic nationalism. But from the perspective of state behavior, all major powers protect what they consider strategic. The United States does not allow foreign companies unlimited access to these defense systems, critical data, advanced chips, energy infrastructure, or sensitive communication networks. Europe is also tightening investments screening, data rules, and technology controls. So why is Western restriction considered rational security policy, while Chinese restriction is treated as proof of political backwardness? Again, the behavior is similar. The moral framing is different. And this is important because language creates legitimacy. When the West says security, people listen. When China says security, people suspect control. That does not mean China's policy should never be criticized. They should be. But serious analysis should apply the same standard to all major powers. If security concerns are legitimate for Washington, Brussels, and London, then we have to at least understand why Beijing also thinks in terms of security. You may disagree with Chinese choices, but pretending only when the West has real security concerns is not analysis. It is double standard. This may be the most obvious double standard in media headlines. When Western countries face problems, the language is usually complex and careful. Inflation is a policy challenge. Homelessness is a social issue. Political polarization is a democratic struggle. Drug addiction is a public health crisis. Deindustrialization is an economic transition. Low birth rates are a demographic challenge. But when similar problems appear in China, the language often becomes dramatic. China is collapsing. China is doomed. China's economy is finished. China's model is failing. China's rise is over. This is not a small difference. It changes how audiences interpret reality. A problem in the West is treated as something that can be managed. A problem in China is treated as evidence that the whole system is breaking. Take demographics. Many developed countries face aging populations and low birth rates. Japan has struggled with this for decades. South Korea has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world. Many European countries are aging rapidly. But when China faces demographic decline, the story often becomes much bigger. This is the end of China's rise. This will destroy China's economy. China will grow old before it becomes rich. Maybe some of those concerns are valid, but why is demographic aging in the West described as a difficult policy problem, while demographic aging in China is treated as a civilizational verdict? The same thing happens with real estate. The United States had a housing crash in 2008. Europe has had debt crisis. Japan had a massive asset bubble collapse. But when China's property sector faces a crisis, the story is often told as if the entire Chinese system is about to implode. Again, China has serious problems. No serious person should deny that. But the double standard is in the framing. Western problems are complicated. Chinese problems are terminal. Western systems face stress. China faces collapse. This is why so many China collapse predictions have failed for decades, because they often start with a real problem, but then force that problem into a predetermined narrative. This is one of the most revealing double standards. When Americans support Buy American, it is patriotism. When Europeans support protecting local industries, it is democratic politics. When Western politics support sanctions, trade restrictions, or defense spending, it is public opinion. But when Chinese people support domestic brands, criticize Western sanctions, defend national sovereignty, or feel proud of Chinese development, it is often described as nationalism, propaganda, or brainwashing. This does not mean propaganda does not exist in China. Of course, it does. Every government uses narratives to shape public opinion. But here is the part often ignored. Chinese people are not robots. They are not empty containers waiting for state media to fill their minds. They have lived through real economic transformation. They have seen cities change. They have seen infrastructure improve. They have seen Chinese companies move from cheap manufacturing to global competition. They have seen Western countries criticize China while also depending on Chinese supply chains. They have seen sanctions, tariffs, technology bans, and geopolitical pressure. So when many Chinese people become more skeptical of Western narratives, that is not always because they have been brainwashed. Sometimes it is because their lived experience does not match what Western media tells them about their own country. And this is a major blind spot. Western media often treats Chinese public opinion as artificial, while treating Western public opinion as authentic, but all public opinion is shaped by media, education, cultural, history, and politics. The West has narratives. China has narratives. The difference is that Western narratives are often invisible to Western audience because they feel normal. That is how ideology works. It does not feel like ideology when it is your own. Now look at international influence. When the United States builds military alliance, funds media programs, supports NGOs, shapes global institutions, and uses sanctions, it is often called leadership. When Europe attaches political, environmental, and legal conditions to trade and investment, it is called rule-based governance. When Western countries promote their values abroad, it is called democracy support. But when China builds ports, railways, power plants, roads, telecom networks, or industrial parks in developing countries, it is often called influence operations, debt traps, or geopolitical expansion. Again, this does not mean every Chinese overseas project is good. Some projects have debt problems. Some have transparency problems. Some may create dependence. Some may serve China's strategic interests. But let us be honest. Western development finance also serves Western interests. Western aid also comes with conditions. Western institutions also shape domestic policy in poorer countries. Western military bases are also about influence. Western media and NGOs also project soft power. So the question is not whether China seeks influence. Of course it does. All major powers do. The question is why Western influence is often described as order, while Chinese influence is described as danger. If America builds a network, it is an alliance. If China builds a network, it is a strategy of control. If Europe sets standards, it is regulation. If China sets standards, it is expansion. This is why many countries in the global south do not see the world the same way Western media does. They are not necessarily pro-China, but many of them understand something Western audience often means. Power always comes with interests, not only Chinese Western power too. Another powerful example is technology. When China uses cameras, facial recognition, digital payment systems, health codes, data platforms, or smart city tools, the word that appears again and again is surveillance. Surveillance state, digital authoritarianism, social control. But similar technologies are used in Western airports, police departments, border systems, financial platforms, social media networks, or smart cities. The language often becomes softer. Public safety, fraud prevention, counter-terrorism, efficiency, convenience, innovation. Now, there are real and serious concerns about surveillance in China. Privacy, civil liberties, government power. These are legitimate issues. But the double standard appears when Western societies pretend they are not also building massive systems of digital monitoring. Your phone tracks you. Your apps track you. Your bank tracks you. Your browser tracks you. Your social media platforms track you. Your location, purchases, messages, preference, movements, and behavior are constantly collected, analyzed, and monetized. In China, surveillance is usually framed as state control. In the West, surveillance is often fragmented between corporations and government agencies, so it feels less visible. But the less visible does not mean less real. The deeper question should be, who connects the data? Who controls it? Who profits from it? Who can abuse it? What rights do citizens have? What limits exist? Those are universal questions. But when the subject is China, the answer is often decided before the analysis begins. Chinese technology is control. Western technology is innovation. That is not serious framework. It is a moral hierarchy. When China builds high-speed rail, ports, bridges, factories, industrial parks, or new energy infrastructure quickly, Western commentary often explains it as authoritarian efficiency, top-down control, no public consultation, state mobilization. But when Western countries try to rapidly rebuild cheap manufacturing, expand defense production, construct clean energy supply chains, or bring back industrial capacity, the language is different. It becomes national mobilization, urgency, strategic execution, industrial revival. Again, the issue is not whether China's model has trade-offs. It clearly does. Fast development can create waste, debt, environmental damage, local pressure, and limited public participation. But Western countries also want speed when they face crisis. They want faster permitting, faster infrastructure, faster defense production, faster energy transition, faster supply chain rebuilding. So why is speed admirable when the West wants it, but suspicious when China achieves it? Because the underlying assumption is different. Western action is seen as rational response. Chinese action is seen as political control. This is why China's infrastructure success is often treated with discomfort. It is difficult for Western audiences to accept that a non-Western system may be better at a certain forms of execution. So instead of asking, what can we learn? The conversation becomes, what is the hidden cost? That is a valid question, but it should not be the only question. Behind all these double standards is one deeper issue. China is rarely allowed to be a normal country. If China protects these industries, it is dangerous. If China opens this market, it is exploiting globalization. If China grows fast, it is a threat. If China slows down, it is collapsing. If Chinese people criticize the West, they are nationalists. If they admire the West, they are enlightened. If China invests overseas, it is expansion. If China stays inward, it is closed. If China competes, it is unfair. If China loses, it proves the system failed. This creates a narrative trap. China cannot win inside the Western media framework because every outcome can be interpreted negatively. Success proves danger. Failure proves collapse. Stability proves control. Disorder proves weakness. Confidence proves nationalism. Insecurity proves fragility. That is why many Chinese people feel Western media does not simply criticize China. They feel it refuses to understand China on its own terms. And honestly, this perception is becoming more common, not only among officials, not only among nationalists, but among entrepreneurs, engineers, students, professionals, and ordinary citizens who have traveled, worked with foreigners, consumed Western media, and still feel that something is missing from the coverage. They do not think China is perfect. Many Chinese people complain about housing, education, jobs, pressure, bureaucracy, healthcare, and inequality, but they also know their country is more complex than the headlines suggest. And that complicity often disappears when China becomes a symbol in Western debates, a symbol of authoritarianism, a symbol of threat, a symbol of unfair competition, a symbol of everything the West fears about its own decline. Some people may ask, why does this matter? Isn't media bias normal? Every country has biased media. Yes, to some extent. But this matters because China is not a small country. China is the world's second largest economy. It is central to global manufacturing. It is deeply connected to electric vehicles, batteries, solar panels, rare earth, shipping, consumer goods, industrial machinery, and global supply chains. It is a major player in technology, trade, diplomacy, climate, finance, and security. If Western publics misunderstand China, they will support bad policies. If Chinese publics feel constantly misrepresented, they will become more distrustful of the West. And if both sides only see caricatures of each other, the world becomes more dangerous. This is not about defending China. It is about understanding reality. A world shaped by misunderstanding is unstable. A world shaped by double standards is even worse, because double standards do not just distort how we see others. They also prevent us from seeing ourselves clearly. When Western media criticizes China's subsidies but ignores its own industrial policy, the West learns nothing. When it criticizes Chinese nationalism but ignores its own nationalism, the West learns nothing. When it criticizes Chinese civilians but ignores corporate civilians at home, the West learns nothing. When it predicts China's collapse every few years and gets it wrong, the West learns nothing. And that may be the biggest danger. Not that Western media is too critical of China, but that this criticism is often too predictable, too ideological, and too self-comforting. It tells Western audiences what they already want to hear, that China's success is not real, that China's problems are fatal, that Western power is normal, that Chinese power is abnormal, that Western influence is leadership, that Chinese influence is danger. But the world is changing, and if we want to understand the world, we need better questions. So here is my final point. China should be criticized. This economy has problems. This political system has problems. This society has pressures. These companies are not saints. This government makes mistakes. But if criticism is based on double standards, it does not produce understanding. It produces arrogance. And arrogance is dangerous, because the real China is not the fantasy of Western decline narratives. It is not about to collapse every year. It's not simply a giant factory controlled by the state. It is not a population of brainwashed people. It is not a perfect model either. China is complicated. It is ambitious, insecure, innovative, controlling, competitive, proud, anxious, disciplined, unequal, dynamic, and deeply shaped by its own history. In other words, China is not a cartoon. And if Western media wants to understand China, it needs to stop treating China as a mirror for Western fears. Because the future will not be shaped by the countries that tell themselves the most comforting stories. It will be shaped by the country that understands reality most clearly. And understanding China clearly begins with one simple step: apply the same standard. If it is strategy in the West, do not automatically call it cheating in China. If it is public opinion in the West, do not automatically call it propaganda in China. If it is national security in the West, do not automatically call it paranoia in China. If it is leadership in the West, do not automatically call it expansion in China. Because the moment we stop using double standards, the real conversation can finally begin. And that conversation is much more important than most people realize.